Good morning. The next project we're going to be working on in class is a pinch pot, and this one you get to keep. So I'm going to demo the process again of making the pinch pot. This one's going to be a little bit bigger than your practice one. So just kind of follow along with me or take notes and pop back in a few minutes and do your own pinch pot after you've watched the video. I have this much clay to start out with. So this is a little bit bigger than what we've used so far, definitely a tennis ball worth of clay. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wedge my clay. So I'm going to flip this down here. And wedging, if you remember, is pushing down, pulling back around. And I just want to make sure that my clay is in a nice ball that doesn't have air pockets in it. So the next thing I'm going to do once I've kind of got my clay wedged is I'm going to shape it as best I can into a ball, pop my finger through the middle, and then start pinching. And as a reminder, you want to pinch from the bottom to the top. So we're gonna start working just at the base, and then I start pinching around the edges. And I'm turning this the whole time. So make sure that the bottom is thinned out before you move up the walls, otherwise you're not gonna be able to reach all the way down to the base. Okay, and then my base is thinned out, so now I'm just gonna pinch my walls around the edge. And I'm trying to do this pretty quick. You guys will, be moving a little bit slower than this. I've probably made, 1,000 pinch pots, so I can work a little bit quicker, I think. If you feel like your pot is flaring out too much, then just go ahead and squish these edges back together. It really depends on what kind of shape you're interested in making for your project. I can also smash that bottom edge flat, so I've got kind of more of a flat surface at the base of my pot. And then I can continue working on pinching my edges out. So these aren't going to be huge. These would be enough to, let's see, for me, I would put chocolate chips in here for a snack, or a little personal sized bowl of guacamole or salsa. So something like that is kind of the size we're after. It's not going to be a cereal bowl, but don't be sad, we'll make those later in the semester. All right, so I've kind of got the base pinched. My walls are even all the way around. Now, since I'm going to keep this one, I do want to fix my edge. So with this, I'm going to take my pin tool and just hold the pin tool in one spot and turn my pot. So just trying to cut off the uneven edge here. And that leaves a lot of those clay burrs on there. So I'm gonna take my damp sponge and just go around the edge and smooth that part out. Get all those off. Okay, and then just reshape it. So my edge should be kind of nice and smooth. Here's another kind of tip or trick is you can press your clay onto your board, and that'll help. I'm kind of smoothing it on the inside with my sponge. That'll help get rid of some of your fingerprints on the inside as well. Now, don't use too much water because then it'll start to collapse. So if it gets too wet, I would, since you're working at home, this is maybe a luxury that we don't have at school, just walk away, let it sit and firm up for a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then come back and work on it again. Okay, once it gets wet and sticky, you can't do anything with it. Okay, so there's my pinch pot. Kind of started, moderately happy with how it looks. I will refine this just a little bit more once I'm done on the video. So next step is going to be to put the foot on, and I'm going to flip it upside down to do that. Mine has a nice edge, so this is where my foot is going to go, right where the bottom or the base and the wall of the pot meet. So it's going to go right here. Don't put it in the middle, it'll punch through, and don't put it way out on the outside. All right, so the next step, again, we practiced this already, is to roll a coil. And there's a lot of different types of feet that you could potentially do on your project. For this one, since we're only making one coil pot or pinch pot, I think just making it with the coil the way I'm showing you is going to be the best as far as skill building. And then later on, we'll have an opportunity to do some other stuff. So for that coil, if you don't notice, my hand is kind of going back and forth along the coil, getting it round. And then I'm gonna score, slip, and seal that back on there. So I'm gonna score all the way around that edge where the wall and the base meet on my pot. Do the same thing on my coil. Put my water on there for some slip. All right, so now I've got my foot on there. And if you guys were in class, I'd ask you what the next step is. So think about that for a second. So it's score, slip, and seal. So now we're gonna take that wood tool and pull the edge of our foot down to the bowl. And you do wanna be careful not to squish your bowl. You wanna be careful not to ruin your foot. That foot should have a distinct difference from your bowl. It shouldn't all smash into one big blob. So if your stuff is too soft and it seems like it's squishing, just let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes and firm up, and then come back and work on it again. Okay, so I've sealed around the outside, and then of course I would want to smooth that out, make it look really good. And then do the same thing on the inside, pull the clay down. So there should not be a gap anywhere where, like this, where I can see, you know, into the inside of the clay. So you want to make sure that's all nicely sealed up. Okay, so go back around the inside, smooth all that out. Inside and outside should look really good. And then if you need to kind of touch up the edges of your bowl, flip it back over and do that. Like I said in the demo for the practice one, I also like to thin out my foot. So I'm going to flip this back and pinch the foot just so it has, you know, a nice kind of flared edge. It looks the same thickness as the walls of my pot. It just makes it look nicely finished. Okay, so now I've got this pot that has, you know, this nice lift or movement off of the table. So instead of just being squat on the table, it's a little bit more elevated. It makes it look a little bit nicer. All right, so at this point, you should have your pinch pot pretty much finished, and just spend a little bit of time really revising and refining your edges. Try to get them really nice and even and smooth. Make sure your edge looks the way you want to. You could leave your edge uneven if you wanted to. You could go and kind of carve a little bit of a curved edge in there if you want to, so that's really up to you and how you designed your project, okay? So at the end of today's class, you should have your pinch pot made. It should look really good as you can make it look. And then you're just gonna let it sit out for, start a timer, 15 minutes. Let it sit out for 15 minutes. After that 15 minutes, I want you to just wrap it up again in your plastic, really, really good. And what we're gonna be doing next is we're gonna do the Sgraffito. So I would put this back in my plastic or Ziploc bag until the next class. Tomorrow's class, we're gonna be working with our underglaze and working on the Sgraffito portion of the pot. Okay, so let that firm up a little bit. It needs to be almost leather hard for us to be able to do the next step. All right, next up is the Sgraffito.